Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Leaders of the Pack Speaker Series. My name is Anna Valegia, and I am the Director of Career Services for the NC State Alumni Association. We are so excited to have an incredible lineup of speakers and are thankful that all of you have decided to spend the next hour with us. So unfortunately, Dewayne Washington will not be able to join us today due to scheduling conflicts. So we will miss him, but are really looking forward to hearing from our other speakers. So just a few housekeeping items before we get started. So everyone is on mute and your video functionality has been turned off. So this session is being recorded and will be made available by email to all registrants before the close of business tomorrow. If you have any questions, please feel free to submit those through the Q&A feature. We had several questions come through that were submitted through the registration form, so we will really try to answer as many questions as possible. So I want to quickly go over the layout of the event. So we have asked each distinguished alumni speaker to speak on the following 3 questions. So question number 1 is, how did you enter the workforce and migrate to where you are now? So we will hear from each speaker individually for this question. Then we'll go on to question number 2, what 3 factors have led to your success? And question number 3, what advice would you give yourself when you were first starting your career, knowing what you know now? So questions 2 and 3 will be as a panel discussion, and then we will open it up to further questions. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our distinguished alumni speakers. I'm going to let the speakers introduce themselves as they answer that first question. So we are going to get started with Eric Troan. So Eric, if you don't mind just telling us, how did you enter the workforce and migrate to where you are now? So we're gonna get Eric up on the screen. 1 moment. All right, Eric, welcome.
Thank you, Anna. Yeah, so I'm the Chief Technology Officer and co-founder here at Pendo. Pendo is a company of about 800 people based in downtown Raleigh. We're about 8 years old. So how did I get here? I've always been a technologist. I've always been interested in engineering and computer science, and NC State gave me a great foundation for that. When I was at NC State, I got very interested in the internet. I hate to admit it, but the internet was really, really new at the time, and we was really kind of the first generation of that back in the early 90s. And as I came out of NC State, I found a company called Red Hat. Red Hat at the time was 2 or 3 people. It was really, really small. And I was looking for a summer job. I was going to go into a PhD program at NC State, and I got invited to join as the first programmer, first engineer. So I joined there, and I didn't go back to a PhD, and then I kept not going back for being a PhD. And as the company grew, I just grew with it. I had a lot of challenges there. I was in my early 20s when I started becoming a manager. I was 25 when Red Hat went public, but it was just an amazing opportunity for me to learn how to not grow an organization, but also how to build product. So I owned product management, I owned the delivery, I owned a whole bunch of stuff. And it was really all though based on my engineering, and I got all those roles because I knew what the product should do. And frankly, I looked like the customer for Red Hat. We were selling to a bunch of people coming out of school who were really helping build the internet. I bounced around a little bit after that. I left there in 2003 and founded a company called RPath. RPath was here in Raleigh. We raised a bunch of venture money, but what we really learned there was that it's a better idea to build a product than a technology. We had some really good technology ideas, but frankly, the market wasn't ready. We weren't solving a really important problem for our customers. We were solving one that was pretty far down the list. It's been interesting as that company kind of foundered and didn't go where we wanted it to watch a lot of the ideas come back. So the ideas are popular now. There's things like Kubernetes and Docker and containers. If you're an engineering person, you know what those are. RPath is one of the first companies to really start exploring what that would mean for the data center. So after RPath, I did some interim jobs, interim work, some consulting work, met some co-founders who wanted to start Pendo with me. And I knew I wanted to get into data science. I knew I was interested in large scale data. I knew I was interested in mobile, and Pendo was a wonderful opportunity to do that. Looking back, why was I a good match for Pendo? I just had a great foundation in building systems, building engineering distributed systems, and engineering products for our customers, and not just a technology stack, because I'd kind of learned that lesson. So joined Pendo. We were 5 of us, 6 of us in 2014, and I've continued to help grow the engineering team and lead the engineering team. We have about 200 engineers in Israel, UK, and North America now, and we're continuing to grow the organization. We did an announcement couple months ago, passed $100 million in revenue. So really excited about the opportunity to do this again and really excited to be part of this panel. So thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Eric. We're very excited to have you. So we are going to turn it over to Amber Moshakos. So welcome, Amber. Let's see. There you are. Okay.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Super excited to be here and to get an opportunity to share with you. And, you know, for you guys, this is a wonderful opportunity to continue to either kickstart your career or continue and advance your career. So my name is Amber Moshakos. I am the president of LM Restaurants, which is a hospitality management company based here out of Raleigh. I am a NC State alum 03 out of biological sciences with a minor in business. And my career path is kind of interesting. I represent the second generation of a family owned and operated business. And honestly, I didn't think I was going to be here, while I was at State. So I was born in the business. My parents are immigrants. And education was really important to them because my dad came from a small village where he didn't have the luxury of an education. He made it through 5th grade and his family couldn't afford to send him. So my parents were very determined that we girls would get an education. So growing up, the expectation was, to work in the family business. Mom and dad started the business in '78 with a small 48-seat restaurant, and over the years grew it. And let's see, like in 1st grade, and this is like when I was like, okay, I'm not going into the restaurant business. I was in 1st grade running the drive-through in summer break, and I made a milkshake and it fell all over the front floor in the middle of a lunch rush. And it was a horrifying experience. And at that point I was like, okay, that's it. I'm not going into the restaurant business. This is too stressful. And, that's hence the reason why I got into biological sciences at NC State. I wanted to go off to medical school. So fast forward, here I am, I'm applying to medical school. And my father looks at me and he's like, Amber, you're crazy. He goes, take a year and come and work with me. 1 year, just 1 year. And if you hate it, then you can go to medical school. And if you don't, we'll see where it goes. So at that point, I was like, okay, I'm going to take a year. My parents were very busy working in my childhood, and I didn't get an opportunity to spend much time with them. And I took the year as an opportunity to get very close with my parents, especially my father. And it was a magical year. It was very exciting. At that point, we only had about 4 or 5 locations here in the Raleigh area. And since we have grown the business across 5 states, about 12 different brands, close to 30 restaurants. I have a family of about 2,300 employees, or they're actually not employees, they're my family. And it's been a really magical time. So that 1 year has grown into many, many years. And it's been a really fun and exciting ride and journey through the process in growing and learning. And I've been so blessed to have my NC State education as a foundation for my career path. And then my parents have been just phenomenal mentors through the process. And then in, it was like 06, 07, I got the itch. I wanted to go back to school because at that point I knew that this was my career path. So I started investigating master's programs, and I stumbled across the master's program up at Cornell, which was specialized in hospitality. So at that point I did take a year sabbatical and go and get my master's in hospitality. And it has, really helped me specialize my craft and my skill set in our industry, in our niche. So I feel like there's so much more that we're excited to do. We have a phenomenal team, and with those 12 brands, we've got about another 5 or 6 locations in the works. And it's all possible because we've got just a world-class team as part of our family. So looking forward to your questions later on, and welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. I'm glad that one milkshake didn't just destroy everything, because it sounds like this is your destiny. So that's wonderful. All right. Last but certainly not least is Richard McPhail. Richard, will you please join us? Thank you. Welcome.
Great. Did that work, Anna?
It did.
Okay, good. Well, look, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Richard McPhail. Thank you for having me. It's a real honor to be with you. So as I look back on what got me where I am today, and I guess I should have said that. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of the Home Depot, headquartered here in Atlanta. Hope everyone has been shopping us hard over the last few years, and thank you for your business. Graduated from NC State in 1992. I have a bachelor's degree in economics and a bachelor's degree in business management. That's how they used to do it back then. Not sure whether we do it that way now. But as I look back on what got me where I am, there's some lessons, and we'll go to this later in Q&A. As you hear the steps I took, it's all about taking risks and running to difficulty, but more important than anything was persistence. And that'll probably become clear as I tick through my career. So I graduated in 92. Back then we didn't have the same profile in business management education at NC State that we have now. And so, I was still searching around for what I thought I could do. I always loved economics. I got a job in Charlotte doing equity analysis. Decided I probably needed a graduate business degree. NC State did not have a master's degree in business at the time. So I went down the road to Duke. Please don't hold that against me. One of the things I learned at Duke was, although I was going to school with folks who maybe had more historically strong business programs, my quantitative background coming from state actually put me in great shape. And in fact, by my second year of business school at Duke, I was teaching first year finance students the Introduction to Finance course at Duke. Graduated from there, came to Atlanta working for Wachovia, which at the time was a great regional bank in the South. I decided I wanted to stay in the South and not go to Wall Street, but I wanted to be an investment banker. One of those lessons of running to difficulty. I loved finance. I wanted the most difficult environment I could put myself into. And so I concentrated on mergers and acquisitions, which helped me not only hone my finance skills, but it helped me hone negotiating skills and the way to deal with counterparties, whether they're friendly or antagonistic. A couple years into that, my boss at Wachovia left and took a few of us with him to Arthur Andersen. And, it was a great situation. We were mergers and acquisitions specialists, and a door opened for me. They were interested in sending folks to London. And I was recently married, didn't have kids yet. So we said, absolutely. Accepted a 1-year stint in London. And by the end of that year, a client that I had worked for in London called me and called Anderson and said, look, we'd like to hire Richard McPhail on a full-time basis to help us do M&A. My wife and I jumped at the chance. And I think taking that risk, I could have had a normal life, successful life in Atlanta, and taking that risk moving to London changed my life. By the time I finished my stint in London, we had been there 5 years. So I worked for a company that was one of the largest companies on the London Stock Exchange called Marconi. They were a telecom equipment provider, kind of stapled onto an old line set of industrial businesses. I ran M&A for them. When I joined them, they were worth 25 billion pounds. But unfortunately, the telecom bubble burst when I was there in the year 2000. We went from a value of 25 billion to under 1 billion. I was making zero bonuses. My stock compensation was zero. And I found myself in the middle of an extremely complex corporate restructuring, which I had no idea and no experience how to pull off. By the end of that process, which was about 2 years, the project that we worked on and I led was mentioned in The Economist magazine as the most complex restructuring ever done in Europe. And it was a lesson to me that, running towards difficulty is always a good thing. And maybe you're a little more capable than you think you are. By the end of our 5 years in London, I didn't have any money in the bank. had zero value in my stock, and we had a baby, and we were ready to come back to the US. Because I had such a great relationship with my boss in London, he allowed me to come to Atlanta and stay with Marconi. But I knew there wasn't there wasn't an end game in sight. I was in a parking lot of the Home Depot one Saturday thinking, I don't know what my next move is, but I've always loved Home Depot, and maybe there's something I could do for them. I have no idea. Bizarrely and coincidentally, and maybe with a little help, another ex-boss of mine called and said, Home Depot's looking for M&A expertise. I know you have it. Are you interested? And so I joined, and this was in 2005. For 2 years, we had an amazing run doing lots of M&A. We expanded the company dramatically. In 2007 and 8, the credit crisis hit the US. It hit housing harder than anyone. Home Depot went through a 2-year period of financial difficulty. And so another door felt like it had closed on me. We worked our way through that, and then I had an opportunity. We stopped M&A, and my CFO came to me, my boss, and said, look, we're not going to do any more M&A. Maybe you should try your hand at being just a finance professional here. Maybe that'll lead to something. And I wasn't sure I wanted to do it, but I decided, hey, we're in the middle of a tough time. Maybe I can learn something. 2 or 3 years after that, we had turned the company around. I was able to witness some of the great business minds that I've ever been around, making tough decisions in tough times. And I think I was able to do that because I always raised my hand for ugly, difficult jobs. And so then, my career just sort of accelerated from there. I ran the strategy group at Home Depot. I took on more and more responsibility in finance, and today I'm the CFO. So the last thing I would tell you is I had no idea how well NC State would have prepared me for all this. The quantitative rigor of the university was one of the keys to my success. And so I'm just proud to be a graduate and proud to tell you how much it's meant for me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Richard. That's a perfect segue to our next question. So I'm just going to ask that all of the speakers join me. Just give that just a second. All right, welcome back. So we are going to do question number 2 and 3 as a panel. So the next question I would like each of you to answer is, what 3 factors led to your success? So Richard, since you were just kind of talking about it, why don't we kick it back to you?
Sure. I think there are 3, and I'll just restate them. Number 1, you should take risks, particularly given, if you're a student about to graduate or if you're a recent graduate. Taking risks is maybe the best way to find out what you truly love. And I would guess, and I mean, listening to Amber and Eric, everybody had a redirect at some point, and everybody had to take a risk. Number 2, run to difficulty, because a lot of others won't. So you're capable of more than you think you are, and you will. We're all trying to differentiate ourselves. I mean, that's just the way a capitalist society works. Run to difficulty. If you fail, at least you've learned something. And, committing yourself to failing and learning is one of the most important things you can do. And then persistence. Hopefully I gave you a little sprinkle of that. I never drew out my career the way it wound up. But it was just sort of recognizing that doors are definitely going to close on you. You've got to look for the open door there. I don't think there's anyone in the world who's successful who didn't have doors closed on them. So be persistent.
Wonderful. Thank you. I am taking some notes. So Amber, what about you?
Oh my goodness, this was a really hard one to prepare for because I feel like there's so many. But I think the biggest thing for me that's led to my success is really focusing on the human skills aspect of leadership. And I'm going to share with everybody, this is something I learned fairly later on in my career, and I wish I had known. I'm going to jump a little bit to like number 3 because they kind of all tie together. So went to a leadership seminar and they taught us this, and this was like eye-opening for me. So in your career, and tell me if you can see this, Anna, you've got, a continuum, and you start here in your career and you're incredibly task-oriented and you get really good at doing your tasks. So then you get promoted. But over here on the other end of the continuum is relationships. And as you progress in your career, you're going to continue to move up this continuum where your success is going to be predicated on being really good at developing and utilizing your relationships. So relationships through networking, through relationships through team building, having healthy conflict. And so one of the keys I think that's like led to my success is really focusing on these human skills. They're not soft skills, they're not fluffy skills, they're really core, because no matter what industry you're in, you're dealing with other people and other humans, and understanding how to persuade them, how to have the healthy conflict, how to have the tough conversations. So I would just say, if you get an opportunity to hone your human skills, I would say take advantage, because that is truly the key to success in the upward momentum at any level of your career. It will help you get to the next level. So that's one, but there's lots of little things inside.
I loved it. And I love the visual too. So thank you so much for that. And I like human skills. I feel like a lot of times we hear like soft skills, but really human skills, I think, adds another element to it. So thank you so much. All right, Eric, what about you?
Yeah, so I'm going to start actually with my number 3. I did not sort them just because I think it goes along with what Amber said. I said it is communication. It's really about learning to communicate. I remember when I was taking one of my first engineering classes, it was a communication class at NC State, and we had to do public speaking. And I was like, why am I doing this? I'm going to be a programmer. My job today is 70 or 80% people. And people will come in, they apologize for using up my time. Like, this isn't what look, I'm really upset about this. I know this isn't your job. And I'm like, this is my job, actually. Like, that's I could not do the rest of my job if all I did was deal with people and communication. When there's so many people around that if you can't help people get through difficult times, it's tough. Not only that, you have to be able to communicate your priorities and what you care about and why you care about internally. If you can't say why something's important, nobody else is going to think it's important. And if you can't write well, if you can't speak well, if you can't really describe what's going on in your head, you're going to have a really tough time kind of growing and maturing along with your career. And that does extend to public speaking, be able to stand up in front of your team or your department or your company or your industry at a conference. All of those are ways that you really do grow, and they're such important skills. For me personally, I have 2 other attributes I think that have made me successful, and they're kind of related, which are curiosity and puzzle solving. And for puzzle solving, I think that gets back to Richard's run to difficulty, which I think is a great way of saying it. When I get a puzzle and I get something that's hard and interesting, I kind of don't let it go. And I think about it when I cycle, and I think about it when I run, and I think about it when I'm cooking dinner. And sometimes it drives people crazy because I come into work on a Monday night or Monday morning, or I send them something on a Sunday. Hey, what if we did this? Right. And that constant brainstorming, constantly taking a puzzle personally. Like, that puzzle doesn't want to be solved, and I'm going to solve it because it's personal for me, and I really, really care. And curiosity is kind of the flip side of that, especially in high tech. The industry is changing every day. And if you're not curious enough in a high-tech industry to keep learning and to keep evolving, I mean, Amber, you must have gone through just an amazing time last year with COVID and all your restaurants shutting down. Richard had to take his whole business and pivot it to online delivery, and pickup services became a part of Home Depot like it had never been before. So that kind of curiosity about how the world's changing around you. When I bring in brand new engineers from school and they ask me what's important to be successful, I say, you better keep in mind that resume has 7 skills written on it. And in 10 years, one of them will matter. So how are you going to replace those skills?
It's weird, but like, I got to chill when you said that. That was so well said, because I look at resumes all day, and that is so true. And
I don't know if it's a chill of excitement or a chill of terror, because I get both reactions.
No, I think that's so great to think about, because a lot of jobs that will exist in 10 years don't exist right now. So that's curiosity is so incredibly important. So, okay, the last question that I have before we go to more of the Q&A is, what advice would you give yourself when you were first starting in your career, knowing what you know now? So, and I know we've kind of touched on a few of these things, but if there's just like that one piece of advice, what would you say, Eric?
I get this question in probably half the interviews I do, and I probably interview 20 people a month. So this is well rehearsed for me. Go find something to be the expert at. Find something in your job where you can go, where it's been abandoned or it kind of got built by 10 people and nobody really understands it anymore, whether it's a process, whether it's part of the closing the books on the monthly financials, or whether it's some piece of software for me, with something in the business that nobody really owns anymore, and go pick it up and own it. And I hate to tell you this, the bigger the company, the uglier that problem is going to be that you own, because there's a reason nobody else owns it. But when you own it and when you adopt it and when you become the expert on it, not only will people ask you for help with that problem, but they'll see you as somebody who takes ownership. And they're going to come ask you for help with the problems that are around that problem. And then that circle will start to grow. So just by you being willing to become the expert and take that responsibility. That's one of the things we look for in our first level promotions.
I think that's great. And that kind of reminds me of that running to difficulty, right? So Richard, why don't you give us yours?
I mean, my answer is changing as I'm listening to Amber and Eric, because their points are so great. When I look back, what would I have told myself? You've got a lot of time. You've got time to figure out what you love. You've got time to figure out what you can be great at. Don't feel like your first step puts you on a path that can't be changed. Just give yourself the luxury of time. You know, at the same time, you asked for one thing. I think there's a combination of a couple of things Amber and Eric said. Put yourself in a position where you can help other people solve their problems. Like, always be seen as that person who helps. And to combine that with Amber's point about relationships, when people learn they can trust you, it puts you on a completely different trajectory. If they know you're a problem solver and they can trust you, you know, it makes you a magnet. And so sorry, that wasn't one thing, but I appreciate Amber's and Eric's comments.
Those are great. Amber, was there anything else you wanted to add? I know you kind of touched on yours with the second question too, but just wanted to give you the chance to add if you needed to.
I'm going to echo what Richard and Eric are saying. It's like all of these things are so incredibly important in progressing your career. But if I could go back and tell my younger self one thing, it would be like, don't forget to network. Networking, it's nerve-wracking at first, especially when you're, younger in your career and you're like, I don't know what, but practice it. It's like going to the gym and starting a new workout, but those connections that you make in your career will help you, and they come in and out, they weave in and out of your life in so many various ways that you would never even imagine. But just continue to develop those relationships and network, take advantage of those opportunities. It's not just about, driving your task list and getting it done, and continuing to have that curiosity. And that's where I feel like the networking is really exciting, because network with people outside of your field, because as you're having these discussions, when it will trigger that curiosity or that puzzle solving inside of your specialty and your fields. But the magic comes from taking something from another field and using it to problem solve within your own.
And Anna, I want to call Amber out for this. I mean, literally the three of us, when we began the call, we have already established a connection, and we had a lot of back and forth on how, things we might want to talk about in the future, connections we didn't know we had. So Amber's right. I mean, it's how things get done.
Absolutely. And I always say, build your network before you need it. If you start to make those connections soon, it just evolves and grows, and you'll be in a very good position as you go on. So wonderful. Well, thank you so much. So we're actually going to move on to the Q&A portion of the event. So I know we had a couple come through, but I'm going to start with a few that we received from the registration, and we'll just kind of do this. Whoever feels really moved by the question, whoever feels like they really have a good answer, just hop on and go through it. If we need to hear from everybody, we will. Otherwise, we'll just kind of popcorn it around. So I really love, I think the habits is just something that I really resonates. I just think it's something that's so important. So one of the questions that we had is, what is one habit you consider to be the most critical in your personal success? So try to just choose one. I would love to hear what you have to say. So whoever is really moved by that question, go ahead and let us know.
Eric, do you want to take it? So this is an interesting one. So habit is not to multitask. One of the things I've learned over, kind of the human skills self-discovery is that your brain can only focus on one task in like the language part of the brain. And so one of my habits is always, if like I'm going to be here, I'm going to be really present and in the moment. And I'm not going to be in a meeting, texting or emailing other people or having multiple conversations. So it's a habit that, has really served me well, because people will come back and go, even though you're so busy, I always feel that, when I'm having a conversation with you, I'm focused and dedicated to you. So multitasking is a farce. It's not possible unless you're walking and talking. You can do two different parts of the brain. So.
That is a great point. And Eric, I know you had come off on mute. Did you want to add anything?
I was going to I can't remember which one of y'all said it, but the trustworthy, I think it was Richard. It is honor your commitments, and if you don't tell people ahead of time, and you can't always do everything you say, but if you're not going to do it, don't surprise anybody. People hate being surprised. I'm sure that people don't like being surprised when your classmates didn't get something done for that project. So it's okay to miss sometimes, but do it as openly and transparently as you possibly can, because it turns out you can miss a deadline, and you can miss a commitment, and you can build a lot of trust at the same time.
I have one tiny one, Anna.
Yeah.
Read all you can. Read all the time. It'll help you in so many ways, and try to make some of it physical instead of a screen.
Is there a one book that you're like, it could change your trajectory, or it just is one that you would automatically recommend if someone were to ask you?
I might start us off because I prepared for this one. I've got 3.
Oh,
so
share
5 appreciation languages. It's really interesting. I got burnt in my career by this, and I'm like so thankful that I have this now. But very similar to the love languages, people have appreciation languages in the workplace. And if you're communicating in one language and they receive in a different one, they don't feel appreciated. And it goes back to that trust and that openness, and you don't get that bond. So this was a really insightful book for me. Crucial conversations. How do you have hard conversations? When you're having that team, that conversation that Eric was just saying, like, hey, you're going to miss sometimes, we're human, but how do you have some tough conversations? And then this one, which I love, this is my magic book, The Human Brand. So this is about, how do you develop trust and loyalty in your connections that you have? So
that's awesome. Thank you. And I appreciate the show and tell. And I will say, just based off of that question, the book, Atomic Habits, I think is wonderful. So if you are looking to build some good habits, that one is really great, very tangible things that you can be doing. So wonderful. We're going to go on to another question. So I thought this was really interesting and timely. So what does the future workplace, or how does the future workplace reflect the work from home trends as well as the work-life balance desires? So I know with the Great Resignation, we're seeing a lot of movement going on. So any thoughts or anyone want to take that question?
I'm happy to go first. That's something we're struggling with here at Pendo, as people are looking for that. I would say be a little careful. I think it sounds really great that everybody wants to work from home. If you're going to really commit to working from home and not being around the human beings that make up your company, make sure you're doing that with your eyes open. You're not going to build the relationships in the same way. My biggest concern with people working from home at Pendo is not them not doing a good job. I don't worry about them pretending to be at work when they're really at the beach. I mean, human beings are basically good. People work hard. My biggest concern is, are they going to develop? Are they going to learn? And are they going to grow? And I was challenged on this by somebody, one of my senior engineers one day said, well, why are you not doing more work from home and being more open to that? And I said, hey, remember when so-and-so came by your desk yesterday? I said, yes. What happened? Said, we talked for like 2 hours. I said, how much did that person grow? And that person's 24. And he said, oh, I said, would you have done that if you were both home? No. So if you want to grow and you really want to thrive, make sure you're putting yourself in a place where you can do that.
That is great advice. Anybody else want to touch on that question, or we can go to the next one?
Well, I think we're all sorting this out, and mindsets can shift rapidly, right? I mean, we're in a really dynamic and sensitive time. I think we're going to learn benefits of remote work, but sort of similar to Eric, it's my view that if you have a tangled problem, you can solve that standing on a whiteboard with another human a lot easier than you can on a screen. It's just true. And that 2-hour conversation, Eric, I guarantee you that wasn't scheduled. And everything remote by definition, well, it's more scheduled, right? You don't have a drop by. So look, I don't think work is going to look the same as it did pre-pandemic, but I think we're going to evolve and market forces are going to prevail. Models that work for people and are going to let a company succeed, and the company is going to go with it. And there's no playbook.
Absolutely. Well, I think this kind of stems from that a little bit. So how has the changing economy impacted your career moves? I know, Richard, you talked about a few different things. I didn't know if anybody else wanted to touch on it, or Amber, if you even wanted to talk about what happened last year. I'd love just to hear your thoughts on that one.
Richard or Eric, do you guys want to take this?
I think you're great. I'll just say very quickly, it was very good for Pendo. We happen to be in the work from home, in the space where people are using technology to enable their business. And I don't know that either of the folks on this call know it, but both of them actually use my products because through vendors that they have.
My view, it didn't change my career trajectory well, I suppose, yes, there were inflection points where collapses in the housing economy changed what I was working on, and the failure of a company I was working for also changed it. So you could say yes. More short term, as Eric said, we had to pivot quickly when we thought we may not allow many customers in our stores at one time. And so, learning that curbside delivery might be something we could do, and then using Eric's technology to help stand it up. What I've learned, it's not a career learning maybe, or maybe it could be applied to career. It's important to fail fast. The term agile gets used a lot, but I think it's used appropriately. You're going to fail. Testing and learning and knowing how to do that, even on a personal basis, is really important. You got to kind of speed up the cycles of testing and learning.
Yeah, last year was a really hard year for us because the government, in a matter of minutes, just shut our business down completely. It was horrific. We created a war room. Fortunately, I had been watching, part of, just keeping, my mind open. I was watching what was happening from China over in Europe, and I was watching the wave come across the world. So we had, as a leadership team, started to ideate, okay, what are our options? And I remember the fateful day I called my father and I was like, okay, I've hatched a crazy plan. I think we can keep, a core team of like our managers and carry us through to the other side of this wave. And he was like, I think we should shut down. And I said, look, give me 5 days. Give me 5 days to test this crazy plan. And fortunately it worked. So in speaking to Richard's, idea of fail fast, it was like, okay, you got to try things, got to iterate. And, like what you were saying, Eric, just puzzle solving. You should have seen the whiteboards and the paperwork across the room. It was intense and insane, but that was how we were able to solve our way through it. And going through, because the economic downturn of 08, 09 was incredibly hard on our industry as well. But fortunately, we take a conservative approach. So it was a downturn for so many, and it was actually a pivotal growth moment for our organization.
That's great. Thank you all for sharing that. So we had a question come through the Q&A that I love. So to steal from Guy Raz and How I Built This, what percentage of your career success was due to luck, and what percentage was due to your skills or work ethic?
I would love to answer that first, because I think Richard already said it. When a door closes, one opens. You have doors opening all the time around you. I think there is some luck in which doors open. It's very hard to know which doors to pay attention to, and there's a lot of skill in that. I've told my kids and I've told other people, look, I've had opportunity I don't know how many times in my life, twice I've been fortunate enough to notice it knocking and then work really, really hard to take advantage of it. So you can't have one and you can't without the other, but it doesn't matter how lucky you are, unless you're a lottery winner, you're going to have to work hard. You're going to have to use your skills. You're going to have to put yourself in a position to take advantage of that. And as folks said about the networking, if you put yourself in that position, you're going to find you get lucky more often.
I love that you said that, get lucky more often, because I think that you do kind of position yourself to receive that luck.
Richard didn't get lucky at Home Depot because he burned all the bridges and he was a jerk to everybody he worked with for 20 years before that. If you did, let me know and I'm going to reevaluate my life. But
I don't think I was. I'll have to go ask people, but I agree with Eric on all that.
So another question I think is interesting, again, just kind of with the times that we're in and the Great Resignation is just the buzz term right now. But what do you do if you feel like you're in a career slump? I know everyone's sort of like made some adjustments throughout their careers. So what would you say if you've experienced some sort of a slump, or if you feel like something's not right? What advice would you have?
I think I can take this because I spent hours talking with a couple team members who are in this like slump mode right now. I would say like slow things down and really kind of do some introspective, question asking. So if you're in a job, ask, some threshold questions. Is it, do I hate the company I work with or I work for? Do I like the culture here? Do I like the people I work with? Because if those questions, if you answer them like, oh my goodness, I hate the company culture, I hate the team I work with, I hate the organization I'm affiliated with, those are things that can't be changed. But if you're, struggling with the tasks in your role or the way things are working and that team dynamics that we were talking about, those are things that, if you have some open, healthy conversations, they can be modified and changed. Those are things that can be improved, with patience and determination and hard work. So, don't necessarily always think the answer is no. Had a conversation with somebody yesterday. She needs a sabbatical. She's burnt out. And she was going to leave because she didn't think that she could take a sabbatical and stay here. And I said, that's not true. We have a home for you and we would love for you to take a sabbatical and come back, when you're in a better place. But if she didn't have the courage to have those sorts of conversations, she would have never known that it was an option. So have open conversations with your team.
I really like that. I'd probably use, I think about it in saying you have more control than you think you do. Like Amber's point about having conversations, particularly earlier in your career, you may feel that there's rigidity. There's a lot of rigidity in the academic environment. Not saying there is at NC State, but their homework assignments, their schedules, maybe you don't want to approach a particular professor. And once you get out, I think you'll be surprised at how many people, if you have an issue, listen. And if you run up against somebody who doesn't want to listen, find somebody else. If you're in that career rut, you're going to find someone who's going to at least listen and help you talk it out.
So I think we've had some, Eric, did you want to touch on that one too? No.
I would, don't be afraid to almost start over. Sometimes you do reinvent yourself. Sometimes you do take a path. Richard talked about going down a path where he became pure finance, not M&A, to see what it was like. I hire a lot of people who have decided they don't like what they did. And I hire bio majors to be computer programmers.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Because I think sometimes people think they're just stuck in their own, the path the major that they did or the path that they're in. So I love that you mentioned that. So I think we've gotten a lot of really great advice today. I know I've been taking some notes. So what is the best or worst advice that you've received? Because if there's some bad stuff out there too, I'd love to hear that. But is there, something that really you remember that you can talk about?
Yeah, this is really easy for me, actually. So one of the founders of Red Hat, when I was 23 years old, and he made me a manager. And I was like, what? I'm like, what do I do now? He said, just remember that A players hire A players and B players hire C players. Surround yourself with people who are smarter than yourself. It is horribly boring to be the smartest person in a room because you're the one not learning anything. And don't be scared to hire people who are going to show you up, because they actually just are going to make you better.
Love that. Anything else?
That's wild. I actually used that sentence. And so it came from somewhere. I can't remember where I heard it, but I use that all the time.
So one thing we did talk about was maybe, pivoting or going into a different direction. And Eric, you just mentioned, hiring programmers who don't have that background at all. So for someone who's maybe trying to break into other industries, and maybe they've been in the same industry 20 years, which is what this particular viewer had mentioned, how do you break into other industries?
In my industry, there's boot camps, there's coding schools, there's just doing it, learning it on your own. I mean, I shouldn't say this on this call, but one of the best engineers I ever hired was an NC State dropout who's now one of the top 5 engineers at Amazon Web Services, but he didn't learn that in school. He learned it by working his butt off. Now, one of the other great engineers I worked with is an NC State graduate. I have 2 of them who sit next to me. They're kind of like the red row here at Pendo. But it's there's always opportunities to learn and to grow and to do things on your own. You can volunteer to get experience. You could take part-time jobs to get experience. You can do projects. So there's lots and lots of opportunities. I actually think the non-traditional ways of getting educated in a lot of industries right now is stronger than it's been at any point.
I know another theme that we've really talked about a lot is the networking, the building relationships, and how important that is. So any advice on how and where to make genuine networking connections that has worked well for you? No one wants to jump at this one.
I think it's a skill, like Amber was saying. Like I don't know that I would point to any particular group. Take advantage of any, maybe you kind of bootstrap this by, joining organizations and just learning how to do it. But the most powerful networking that's probably ever happened to me is not at a formal event where everyone is networking. It's more just learning the skill of finding something in common, even if it's something little, and staying in touch. People want to cooperate with each other. When people cooperate, great things happen. And so it's just, build the skill and use it, all you can, make it natural to you.
I think that's great, because I think sometimes people think they have to go to a particular event in order to be successful at networking, where it really just happens in your everyday conversations that you have with people. So I think that's a really good reminder for us to have.
It's really about paying attention to it, I think, and making sure you're following up, making sure you're chatting with people, making sure you're finding folks, and not just letting the connections die.
Yes, follow-up is huge. And I feel like that's where a lot of us really struggle. This was interesting. So what customer behavior changes have you observed over the last decade?
Well, for us, the biggest one is the influence that the internet has had on e-commerce and the retail customer. At Home Depot, we went from, if you're talking 10 years ago, you're really talking about a part of our business that wasn't meaningful to a part of our business that was approximately 15% of our revenues in 2020. And so, the internet is a vehicle, but the thing that is really, I think, advanced is the requirement for convenience, the demand to save time. That's just accelerated, through the decade. And I don't think you ever see that demand go backwards. I think we've all just been, surprised in many ways of how fast and how much people are willing to pay for convenience.
Richard, you took my answer. I was going to say the consumer over the last decade has really changed their value proposition on time. So for our industry, it's like, how do we get people out of check jail faster? That convenience, and it's meeting the consumer the way, they want to be met, or, so having that omni-channel presence and just looking, through the customer journey, anywhere that there's a friction point where, you can shave off seconds. It may seem silly, but that's impactful to the guest.
Yeah, I think there's been a huge, and again, the internet's probably responsible for this. There's been a huge pivot in kind of the world towards making sure that you're having human interactions or human interaction add value, and not having human interactions where it doesn't add value. So when I'm ordering takeout from Taverna Agora, I want to do it online. There's no value to me making a phone call and talking to a human being. When I'm at Taverna Agora, I sure don't want to order with a tablet. I want to order with a human being because it changes the experience. But it's not, you can see the same thing in a stock trading platform. You want to execute your stocks without having to talk to a broker. But when you want to do financial planning, you want to talk to a person. So all of these companies and all these industries are trying to get folks working with their customers and working with where the human being is unique and where the human being is different. And the stuff that's transactional and you just want to get through it, that becomes automated, that becomes computers, and that becomes your mobile device.
I really enjoyed your answer, all of your answers to that question. That was great. Thank you so much. So I think we have time for one more question. I'd love to hear from each of you with this. And I think it is a way that everyone is sort of connected here today. So how has your NC State experience enabled your career? And we will start with Eric.
Look, I was really fortunate when I went to NC State, and I was coming out of a really strong high school, and I got to take a lot of graduate classes. State was really supportive of me not just being a 100 level computer science major. So I graduated with a ton of graduate classes. I got a double degree. I did it all in 4 years, and I was able to work while I did it. And that combination of having tons of graduate experience, having work experience, and getting it all done in 4 years really just set me up for everything. I mean, I still use that. I still use it when I solve technical problems. I used it at Red Hat when I solved technical problems. And the flexibility that I found and the support I found for doing that was something I wouldn't have found at most universities.
Thank you. What about you, Amber?
Oh my goodness, I lean on my NC State education all the time. Our professors are fantastic. And the mantra, think and do, I think they really set you up for success, because you can think all you want, but if you can't take that beautiful idea and translate it into action, whether right or wrong, right? Because it might fail, but you have to try something. That's what I think one of the greatest learnings that, I got from my degree. And in going to Cornell, I hate to say this, but the professors at NC State are just as good. So.
Love to hear that. Love that. All right. What about you, Richard?
I think it was definitely the quant orientation of the school. When I look back, we had some, I think, ahead of their time classes on financial derivatives, just as an example. But in the field of finance, we're seeing an evolution. It's not just finance, it's just business. We're relying on data scientists more than ever. And I use that term broadly. But here at Home Depot, we've actually begun hiring NC State educated data scientists. We have folks with master's degrees here from NC State. And it might sound a little weird that a retailer leans on it, but under the covers of you walking the aisle of a Home Depot to buy a hammer, there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into knowing who you are, knowing how to serve you, understanding what's working and not in the stores and on the website, and then our supply chain. It's all quant. And so when I talk to folks from the management school, that's what I say. That's the finance graduate of 10 years ago is the data science graduate of today.
Wonderful. Thank you.
That's almost true of a lot of computer science graduates of today too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we do want to be respectful of everybody's time, and we are really close to the hour. So thank you so much, each of our wonderful speakers, for sharing your stories and advice with us. I know I took a ton away. I have a bunch of pages of notes. So thank you so much. It was extremely insightful and just wonderful information. So we hope that everyone will join us next week on Thursday, November 18th, to hear from alumni who are leaders within various nonprofit organizations and how they navigated to where they are today. So again, thank you all for watching, and thank you for joining us, and have a great rest of the day. Bye. Go Pack.